Okay, so starting the video in T minus 3, 2, 1.
Banana slam jam.
Welcome everybody. We are doing another replay analysis. This is going to be a 4.5k Lifestealer replay. Pretty short it looks like, but what he asked is that he's wondering how to get more farm from an easy lane. So, we are going to watch this replay with the intent to talk about that. And maybe some of any other things we might see. Okay. I don't know if I would have gone Orb of Venom. You're against a Centaur. I guess it's okay, but he kind of wants you to hit him. I would have leveled Feast if you're going to hit him at the rune like this. So the point of Orb of Venom is that you trade a lot. So you just spent this entire time not having Feast, and you hit him like 19 times. So you missed out on 1.5% of 700. So that's like 200 health that you'd have, pretty much. And you also would have attacked him more because of the 15 attack speed granted to you. So kind of similar to the other replay I did where the Underlord built mangoes and then didn't level his skill that required mana. You went Orb of Venom and then didn't level your skill that benefits you from right-clicking a lot. So it kind of just doesn't line up for me. And to me that's really important whenever you have skill builds. So, in item builds. So that's a first and foremost thing for us here. So far, just trying to maintain some lane equilibrium. Always try to not use the courier at moments where you actually need to be in lane. It's all about priorities. So stuff like couriers and shit should always try to come second. I think the most important thing in the early lanes is range creeps. So make it so they have to work to deny you range creeps. You should never give people freebies. I think that's really important. That's like my main emphasis is as long as you're doing what you think is best possible thing to get that range creep, sometimes you just can't get it. So like if you thought to yourself what you should do to get the range creep and you just can't get it, that's sometimes how it is. But giving up free creeps in general, but especially range creeps, because they're worth more gold and a little bit more XP, just unacceptable, really. It's something that you can prevent from ever happening. So it should be really at the core of your focus. I think it's really important in general to kind of like sort through what priorities in your mind. So courier is something where you can learn to use it properly while having it be a tier below priority of certain things, such as that. But if you're like me, you'll just casually feed your courier because you're more concerned about the range creep and you forget about your courier sometimes. I would almost rather you feed the courier while going for the range creep and then remember to not do that in the future than miss the range creep because you're using your courier, if that makes sense. Okay, so like I said, I don't hate the Orb of Venom, but I just wanted your skill build to line up with it in the early game. So at this point, we've lost lane equilibrium. I'd be telling my silencer to pull ASAP. Looks like he's trying to. Instead, you're going on him. You got a lot of creeps. This is a good engagement that you took there. So at this point, though, you did lose lane equilibrium, and your silencer refuses to pull. He keeps trying to pull the large camp, which is generally pretty difficult. Does get 2 range creeps. So the emphasis that I would have from this is you should not be... you have 2 choices. 1, you're over here to clear the wave with these 2 range creeps. Or 2, you're zoning them away from these range creeps while they die. There's no in between. You either pull to get more experience or you pull to deny experience. If you're pulling to deny experience, you just go fuck with them while the creeps are dying. If you're pulling to get experience, you try to kill them as soon as possible so that, or such that when the opponent wants to try to come over and soak XP or maybe contest the last hit, they're not able to do so. So the thing I've emphasized a lot in these replays is there's usually 2 or 3 choices that are correct. Anywhere in between them is wrong. I would much rather you make one of the correct choices incorrectly, meaning that sometimes it would be better to zone them than it would be to clear this camp. But I'd rather see you doing one or the other and then talk about why it's wrong. I don't want to see you going halfway. So just to be clear, when you pull creeps, you're either zoning people or you're clearing the camp. In terms of if you're in a behind lane, you're either trying to change the lane equilibrium, and you just, like I did in my Slardar game today, I kind of just pulled the creeps to get away from the Razor and then let the Razor have the big camp, but let the lane come to my tower. That's one of the approaches you do when you're behind in lane. But when you're ahead in lane, you're either denying creeps or you're accelerating your own experience gain. So when you're ahead in lane, you know, you don't really have to concern yourself with defensive stuff. When I am worried about the opponent trading with me a lot, I'll buy stuff that makes me trade better. Usually I go items that help me trade better when I am in a heavily contested lane. But in this type of lane, when you're really at the advantage, I would much prefer items that just allow you to be more aggressive. Yeah, on like Agi heroes, you can go Wraith Bands and stuff, because Wraith Bands not only allow you to be more aggressive, but they also help you trade, but they also help you farm. So they kind of just do a little bit of everything, which is fine. But on Strength heroes, you know, it's not the same. You can't just go Bracer and accelerate your farm. So in this case, what I mean is I would buy the Blade of Attack prior to buying the Chainmail. You know, Chainmail doesn't change anything in this lane. The Centaur can't trade with you anyways. So why are you buying an item that makes it so he does less damage to you? You're just not going to lose that battle. So you ask me about how to get more farm in a good lane is not buying unnecessary items. Like, it all changes in terms of efficiency of order, you know? If you're going for treads, some games you need that belt of strength first. Sometimes you need the boots first. But other games you can actually just get the glove of haste first. And if you choose to get the belt of strength first before you get the glove of haste in an unnecessary situation, you're just being inefficient. So these are types of things that you should look for when you are in free lanes. So notice how the guy actually walks over and soaks the XP from you because you did not spend the whole time pulling, hitting the creep. You would have killed it before he was in XP range if you would just sit there wailing on the creep. Okay, so you've continuously pushed the lane. Like, I would just love you to do 9 more damage per hit here. He's not hitting you. You probably kill him with 9 more damage per hit here. Yeah, 100%. Like, there's a missed kill. With 9 more damage per hit. Your DPS goes up by, you know, 5%. Or, excuse me, 20%. I was, like, doing that reverse. I have to instead of doubling it.
Missing bottom.
So I think not clearing that... Is that big camp still not cleared? Okay, it is. Never mind. I think your lane equilibrium management is not great. Your support could be pulling more. But if my supports are kind of proving that they're not going to pull, I'm going to be very adamant about not letting the lane push out. Like, I think it's really important that if you're at this big of an advantage, that Centaur should be getting shafted. He should not be getting anything out of the lane. Like, if I'm Centaur, I shouldn't be allowed to walk up. So, with that in mind, as a carry, there's usually this point where you start playing for efficiency, but before that, you start playing for gathering the advantage, such that you can... So the goal is to first, in my opinion, bully, or, like, zone. So I eventually, what I do is I zone them, and then once I feel like I'm strong enough and have enough efficiency items to do so, I'll look to zone them and do what you're doing now, right? I'm looking to accelerate my game while slowing theirs down. So in this case, you're not strong enough to do both just yet. There's always a time where you hit that threshold, right? You hit the threshold of being strong enough to do both. It's kind of different on every hero, and it's different in every matchup, but knowing that it exists is really important. So in this case, you're just shoving the lane into a guy that you should be crushing. and he is going to get level 4 off this creep wave most likely, and he's only about half a level behind you. I would say you should be like a level and a half ahead of this guy based on how the lane started, as well as based on the matchup at this point. Like, this is a matchup where if Centaur can't trade with you, he's kind of just boned. Like, that's what I mean by this type of matchup. So let's see what you do here. You do look like you pull. Okay. So for me, this pull would be for the sake of righting the equilibrium. That's why I would have done that pull, which is fine. You did. Just making sure you're understanding why that was a good pull. I would do exactly what you're doing now. I wouldn't look to pressure the tower because you're just... I don't know. I'm not really looking to do that this game. I'm looking more so to focus on shutting down the Centaur, which is what you're doing. I'd be getting every last hit, every deny, which is what you're doing. I wish this had started earlier, this discipline here that you have. I don't know why it had to wait till this long. Okay, so at this point, you're just playing hyper passive. So if Centaur is not farming the lane, what are his choices? To jungle either his own triangle or to jungle your big camp. And you shouldn't be giving him anything. Like, you're strong enough to the point where he should get nothing. So what carries that are, like, what really good carries will do is they'll be like, well, I know he's either jungling here or he's jungling over here. And I'm going to make sure he's not jungling here because he shouldn't be allowed to do that. Like, that's not okay. So at this point, since I'm really strong, he gets nothing for free. You know, there's no free range creeps in the early game, like first wave or two. There's no free jungle camps for a guy that's really far behind. So you can do exactly what you're doing here while walking at this camp. You know, if you're like a Drow Ranger and you can't just walk through creeps to contest, that's different. But you're a hero that doesn't mind walking through creeps to make sure he's not doing this. So knowing the impact that creeps have on you is really important. This guy has no business being allowed to hit that big camp. Luckily, your silencer zones him rather than you. Now, you even drag the wave into the big camp. You're probably going to miss a creep or two from it. Yeah, you are. So just hyper inefficiency there. You actually missed like 5 creeps going for that kill when I think you could have missed 0. Maybe even 1. Definitely keep that poor man shield. Why didn't you want that? I know maybe Bloodseeker's an agility hero, but Lifestealer very much benefits from a poor man's shield. This is just nutty.
Radiant's middle tower is under attack.
There's no reason to do this at all.
Dire's bottom tower is under attack.
So when I'm playing heroes like Lifestealer, I realize that I'm in a situation that my hero trades very efficiently over time. Slarks, Lifestealers, PLs, when he gets ult. When PL gets ult, I mean, because you just throw illusions at people. If you do the poke game, you win, right? Like, you just slowly but surely hit them a lot, and you win the war of attrition. So why commit on heroes that don't need to commit? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So make it so they rotate 3 heroes to your lane and then just back off. It's like, yeah, I know you forced 3 heroes, but you, like, almost died, and you wasted a lot of your mana, and it's also a lot of your time. That you could do the same thing while wasting virtually no time. So all of these things combined, you're accomplishing it by wasting an extra 15, 20 seconds of your time instead of just doing it efficiently. Like, you could have done exactly that and then go clear a small camp rather than doing all this chase shenanigans that's going on over here. There's just no benefit to you killing that Oracle. Like, I don't really give a shit about this. Like, okay, but what if he's just zoned away from the creep wave in the first place, you know, instead of just killing him? There's no benefit to killing him if he's level 4 and you're missing creeps. That's how I look at it. You can just zone him away from the area that matters rather than killing him way far away from the area that matters. So, like, everyone has, like, an area of priority, right? Like, he wants to be in lane. So when I'm ahead, instead of looking to kill somebody, I'm looking to control the area that he wants to be. And if he steps out into that area, by all means, fucking kill him. But, you know, that area is different at all times, but no reason to go crazy overextending to do that. So you are being very aggressive, which is which is good. You know, I'd rather you not be a pussy. But I also think, you know, you're asking how to get more farm out of a free farm lane, and I think you're really over-exaggerating the aggression in regards to your farm efficiency. There's just this balance where you can accomplish so much and without losing that much efficiency. There's like a balance, and you're going really heavy on the aggression. So look at when other players, like really good players, are being aggressive. Like watch their games and understand like how many creeps are they missing, what kind of trades are they going for, that kind of stuff. This isn't exactly a good matchup for you, so I would have stayed bottom 100%. I think going to a Slark is just bad when you're Lifestealer. Like, not only are you going to a Slark, but you're also going away from a Centaur. So you're taking a bad matchup and putting yourself, or taking a good matchup and putting yourself in a bad matchup. So because of that, I told you I was already analyzing that ahead of time. This is not a shock that an engagement happened in the lane and it was bad for you, period. If you're against Centaur, you're almost certainly going to have a good lane matchup. Whenever I'm a carry, I think to myself, past the laning stage, like now that the laning stage has kind of devolved, people are still kind of laning, but you're at the point where the dead lane concept starts to apply, and now you also need to gauge what heroes on the map you want to be against, like while you're farming. Slark is not the one that Lifestealer wants to be against. Centaur is the one that you want to be against. So the only time you should leave your safe lane is what? Ask yourself right now. No spoilers. Okay, it's when Slark rotates to your lane. Duh. Like, that makes sense. So do that, right? Make sure you're getting the right matchups. Like, there's no surprise that when you put yourself in a bad matchup, that naturally bad things are more likely to happen. Why is this Centaur allowed to farm the bottom half of the map without getting hit by you? Why? He should have to have 3 heroes show up to make sure that he can do that. Instead, you get 3 heroes to show up to a Slark that then kills your teammate, and the Centaur is then farming. If you do the opposite, it's just where you go on the Centaur, the net amount of farm is the same for both teams, but the efficiency of their rotation is way less. So just something to consider there. If anybody goes to the Slark, it should be the Bloodseeker, not you. So you're pretty dead set on being aggressive, and I think if you want to go to the Slark's lane, if you have Bloodseeker, that kind of makes sense, because Rupture is very good. So what do you know? The guy that's good against Slark, he's there now. This is good. Crazy. Dota's a pretty straightforward game when you break it down. So now you're playing this part of the map. I think that's fine. I think you just went a bit too early. I'd say, like, you should have walked bottom and then been ready to TP top rather than walking top when you did. The only way I really imagine you dying is Disruptor ultimate. So you'd have to get, like, either Blink Stomped or just smoked onto with an instant Disruptor ulti. But I think you're pretty much unkillable unless you walk into them. So you can play pretty aggressively on the map here. You're up by 8,000 gold, and at this point you clearly understand that you can play aggressively on the map. What's your Bloodseeker got? He's got a Diffusal, so he's itemized against the Medusa. I think you should definitely go Halberd. It's just too good against Medusa and Slark, so if you go for this SNY, I'd be... You know, I think it's just a better item to go Halberd. Yeah, I would just much rather have a Halberd here. So, just a bit of an overextension. Like, you're giving the opponent the only way they can come back into the game. I'm telling you, you're not killable if you don't overextend, so the only time you're going to die is overextending. So, that's acceptable if you want to try to push your limits, but being aware of the way you die is really important. So, in this game, I'd do a lot of push and poke. You know, I'd be hitting them, forcing reactions. If they react, I back off. If they don't react, I kill the guy, right? Like, that's how I would have approached the laning stage. When it came to, like, being aggressive around the tier 1, that's how I would have approached this stage of the game. And they just have heavy counter initiation with Oracle save as well as, you know, Disruptor ult on top of you and Medusa ult. But they don't really have much catch other than Slark. So you do end up going back for the Halberd. You mainly asked about the laning stage. And at this point in the game, you know, you're up by 7,000 gold. I'll watch a little bit more, but I think I've really primarily talked about what you asked for and what I think your issue is. That it could apply in all stages of the game, but it won't really show itself as a weakness at this point. I think you should stop being so scared on the map. The only hero you're afraid of is Slark. So I would have been pushing mid this entire time since I saw Slark bottom. I think mid should be at their tier 2 rather than where it is. You could have done the exact same thing here, but I would have been pushing mid prior to this. AC seems like a bit much. I would have definitely gone for the Basher myself, even considered like a Deso. I don't think you need a defensive item. Lifestealer doesn't do a lot of innate damage. AC used to be far better on Lifestealer because he had damage from Feast. So the AC buffed up his Feast damage. Now he doesn't really have like any innate damage, so I wouldn't go for the AC here. I would definitely just go for a Basher. Potentially Deso, but I think Basher's better. AC just doesn't really change anything for you. You're going to get hit by Slark, he's going to have a defusal, and even if you live, you're going to have no mana. So you need to make it so he can't wail on you without being threatened. Like, I would just much rather you have a Mithril Hammer and part of a Basher right now than... Like, you're not coming close to dying, right? Like, that's not the problem. If you die, it's going to be Slark having 30 Essence Shift stacks from hitting you, and that's not going to change from an AC, pretty much. Okay, so it looks like they're pretty done. I would say this was a pretty straightforward replay. There's a lot of little inefficiencies that are resulting in you being 4.5k. It's whether or not you're prioritizing aggression a bit too much, which is, honestly, I'd prefer that than being really scared. You're probably the exception. Like, most people are not like this. But also, you know, having in mind why you buy items. So I always talk about this. You need to have a clear-cut reason on why you buy items. You bought a chainmail first item when you have literally no threat against you in the laning stage. So why are you buying an armor item when the opponent doesn't threaten you at all? If he's like hitting you back and forth and you think that extra 4 armor will make or break the lane, sure, like that can be a first item. Like, that's absolutely fine in those types of situations. But in the situation where you're up by a whole level, you know, he got away from a kill because you didn't go the damage item. You could have cleared that big camp even faster if you went for that small damage item. It's all these like little efficiencies that make it so you miss that extra camp, you miss that extra kill. You know, you don't make it quite in time to push the wave as well as pull the big camp into your next wave. You know, you also were pushing the lane a bit too early. There's a stage where you start to push the lane, and you were doing that a bit too early. So you can look for better players when they're playing, when they choose to start pushing the lane, when they start to dive and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes it is super early. But in this case, on a hero like Lifestealer, I generally let it go until, you know, 8-9 minutes in when I'm like level 7 and I'm just so strong with that first item. When I'm at an advantage, I'm obviously talking about. So every hero is a bit different. You know, heroes like Morphling hit their power spike at level 4 or 5, like even level 3 sometimes, if you're really far ahead on Morphling, just because you get the 2 points in attribute shift. But heroes like Lifestealer, it's around like 7-ish that they get really strong. Same with Slark. You know, Anti-Mage's power spike is more like level 2 or 3. PL's when he gets 6, especially 7 because of the maxed passive. Troll Warlord, you know, he can be even around like level 5 because his ultimate doesn't change his power level that much. Faceless Void is more like level 6, level 7. You know, I'm just naming power spikes on these heroes that you can look to aim for. It's always a bit different, right? But that's the point, is you need to think about your power spikes. You need to think about, you know, what items you actually need to get done what you're doing. And in this lane, I would have argued maybe you didn't even need the boots. Like, what if you could have just rushed a javelin? You know, we've seen it on some Lifestealer players in professional. I'm not arguing that you should have, but if you're not going to get the blade of attack, I would argue that you should just get a javelin. One or the other. The point is, it's a damage item that makes you farm faster and threaten them more, rather than an item that's defensive that you didn't need. So, okay, hope you enjoyed this replay, sir, and thanks for donating and such. What would you say the most efficient farming patterns? Is there a specific time that is best to rotate through camps for the next game, for example? Where would you say you should move to farm? I don't think like that. I don't really have anything else to say. The way I think about Dota is lanes need to get pushed. And if I don't need to push a lane, then I need to be around a lane, whether that's threatening to be aggressive on objectives or that's posturing to be defensive on our own objectives. In that case, whatever lanes I need to be in, I farm the jungle camps between those. And I determine how many jungle camps I can hit by making sure I'm at the lanes in time.